What is happening, everybody? It is Friday evening, and we're about to start the NFL playoffs. And this show here, sponsored by OwnersBox, we're going to break down this weekend's playoff slate. So we've got the Saturday slate, we've got the Sunday slate, 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the tools at Stokastic.com to build lineups and then simulate them as well using our contest generator as well as our simulation tool. And if you guys are wanting to sign up for the NFL package, now's the time to do it. We've got playoffs starting this weekend. And if you sign up now for the NFL Sims Max package, it is discounted. $99 to get access to it for the rest of the season through the Super Bowl. And also, that comes with a free trial of our PGA tool. So anybody who's an NFL Sims Max subscriber as of now gets access to our PGA tool for the rest of this week's tournament as well as next week's tournament. So through January 21st. So anybody who has access, either signing up now or already has the NFL Sims tool, you're going to get the PGA Sims tool for free. So come try it out because we've got the start of a new PGA season, and it's kind of like the preseason for PGA, but it's a good time to test it out and get yourself comfortable before the bigger tournaments roll around. So we're going to be covering OwnersBox here. They're sponsoring the show. And if you guys have any questions as we're building out lineups here and looking ahead to the slates this weekend, throw it into YouTube chat. Any questions you guys have, certainly read it and go over it. But where we're going to start is with the Saturday slate. So we'll build lineups, we'll simulate, and we'll see what kind of exposures that we're getting to for Saturday. By the way, a shout out here to Green Adam in the chat saying, hey, Greg. Hey, Adam, what's happening? If you guys have any questions or anything specific you want me to look more into, throw it into the YouTube chat, and then we could definitely hit on that. So we got Saturday lineups here built, just built 10,000 lineups. Now let's simulate them. Let's see, what is the payout to first? What's the payout to first on OwnersBox for the Saturday slate? What percentage? So Saturday pays, let's see, 20% to first. So go 20%, and then we'll run the sim based on the lineups we just built. And then on top of that, it is going to be max of 70 entries. So after this is done being simulated, I'll favorite my top 70 lineups. We'll check what some of the exposures are. And then after that, we'll look ahead to Sunday's slate and we'll answer any questions you guys have along the way. As far as bets, we can look at some bets too if that's something that interests you guys. We could pull these up in Odd Shopper on my other screen while the slate is simulating. We'll see what kind of bets we could find for the NFL. But also kind of curious, what are you guys eyeing? Are there any bets that you like for this weekend? Is there any sort of DFS options you guys are really high on? Let me know in the chat because that could also help inform some of the stuff we'll look at here. But all right, NFL bets for the weekend while this is simulating. What is projecting well right now? I pulled up Odd Shopper over here on my other screen. We have lots of unders that look pretty good in the Pittsburgh-Buffalo game, which I like to see that because that game is going to be pretty rough potentially. Total is only 33.5 points in the Buffalo-Pittsburgh game. It's expected to be windy. The weather's expected to be bad in terms of snow. I think they're calling for like a foot of snow over the weekend. So some unders that are looking good there include under 0.5 passing touchdowns for Mason Rudolph. We've got a few books that are posting that currently at plus 110, including BetMGM. And I like that number. If you guys watched this morning, Lofty and I did a Sims show we broke down DraftKings and FanDuel for the main slate. Didn't go over OwnersBox as much, but one thing that we did talk about in addition to the weather is how it's impacting the team total for the Steelers. They are projected as a team, their implied team total, 12.75 points, right? That doesn't equal to very many touchdowns. So with that in mind, bad weather conditions do like under 0.5 passing touchdowns for Mason Rudolph at plus money. Here we go. We got the lineups all simulated out here. So let's favorite the top 70. That's the max you could play in the Saturday contest here on OwnersBox. And now we'll look at some of the top lineups here. Something else to be cognizant of, well, a couple of things actually, is that OwnersBox is SuperFlex. So if you guys are looking for a different format to play DFS, OwnersBox, you could play 2 quarterbacks. Don't have to worry about defenses in those lineups. You play 2 QBs instead. If you want to play a different position at the SuperFlex spot, you could, but primarily it should be quarterbacks. That's what's going to give your lineups the most upside. And if you look in here, you'll see most of the lineups that I have. Actually, all of my top projected ROI lineups do have a quarterback in that super flex spot. And then also this only being a 2-game slate, we're going to be seeing some pretty aggressive stacking going on here in the sim. So my number one overall highest projected lineup by simulated ROI, the quarterbacks are CJ Stroud and Joe Flacco. And let's see, what are the stack types on these? We've got 2 triple stacks in this lineup, right? So we've got Joe Flacco, and he's being paired with Elijah Moore, David Njoku, and David Bell. So some of the cheaper pass catchers. No Amari Cooper being combined with Joe Flacco. He's not in this number one lineup here. And then CJ Stroud, he's being paired with Devin Singletary, Nico Collins, as well as Robert Woods. Woods is officially listed as questionable to play, so we're going to need an update on him. Noah Brown is also questionable, so we'll see what their status ends up looking like tomorrow. I'm not overly concerned. This is the playoffs. I think they're going to be good to go, but it's at least worth noting that it's something we can't just, lock in and forget about it. We have to keep on top of those injury reports and see what ends up happening. But let's see. Top stacks here: Cleveland, Houston, Cleveland, KC, Cleveland, Miami, Houston, KC, Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland, Miami, Cleveland, KC, Cleveland, KC. Pretty clearly here. It looks like the two quarterbacks we're getting the most of are going to be Joe Flacco and Patrick Mahomes, but Flacco really, really seems to be showing up in a lot of our top lineups, which I really do understand, particularly from a pricing aspect. Think about the Saturday slate. We've got 4 QBs to choose from, and it's a super flex. So here at OwnersBox, we're going to want to play 2 QBs, 2 stacks. Joe Flacco is considerably cheaper than CJ Stroud, than Tua Tagovailoa, than Patrick Mahomes. And just from a salary saving standpoint, overall, the Browns are by far the cheapest team to roster on the weekend. Therefore, it's going to be really hard to make stacks where it's like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs on one side, and then say like CJ Stroud and the Texans on the other side. You're going to need that salary savings. That's where the Browns are going to come in. So we'll see what the exposures look like when I change pages. My expectation is that Joe Flacco is overwhelmingly going to be the quarterback we're getting the most exposure to. And Green Adam in the chat is saying, so do the tools like the Browns? They love the Browns. All the lineups that I built, and we're going to see our exposures here in a second, but all the lineups that I've built for DraftKings, for FanDuel, and now for OwnersBox, it looks like the Browns are the team that I get the most exposure to for the Saturday slate. So right here, I'll just sort by Cleveland, and we'll see what we're getting to. And yeah, lots of these guys. I mean, Ford, Flacco, Elijah Moore, David Njoku. These are guys who are all showing up in north of 50% of my lineups. Lots of exposure to the Browns. By the way, follow-up question from Adam AG says, is there only going to be one basketball show now? No, so there's still going to be 2 basketball shows on just about every day. The only days that there's going to be one basketball show is some of the really small slates. So I think like next Tuesday, there's only 3 basketball games. So that day we'll just do the one NBA show. So just based on some of the numbers that I look at in terms of, like audience retention and viewership, there's no real added benefit for us to do a 2-hour block of NBA shows for like 2 and 3 game NBA slates and some of the 4 game slates as well. For stuff like 5 or more games where people are looking for more information, I still do find value in us doing 2 hours of basketball shows, just not as much for some of the 2 and 3 game slates. So I think it's better for some people's time to be spent on, maybe some other activities like either helping with projections or, other stuff that we have going on, short form videos, things along those lines. But for the most part, we're going to have 2 NBA shows just about every day, including today, 2 NBA shows today. Anyway, back to the football here and to Adam's question, getting to a ton of the Browns. And by the way, everybody, Green Adam in the chat, Adam EG in the chat, appreciated all the back and forth and the questions you guys throw on. Everything is appreciated. And yeah, so lots of Browns. Now, if we go to the positions and go to QBs, I have to assume that this is going to be Joe Flacco leading the way, and it is. And a decent amount of all of these quarterbacks, and actually we are overweight to nearly all of them. I'm kind of surprised that there are as many people as there are on OwnersBox that do not roster quarterbacks in the super flex spot. So that's how you could be overweight to nearly every quarterback on the slate. People might look at this and be like, doesn't make any sense. There's 4 quarterbacks. How do you get overweight to all of them? Because I'm building lineups that have quarterbacks in the super flex spot where oftentimes the field might be playing a running back or a wide receiver in there or something like that. So with that in mind, Joe Flacco, the quarterback I get to the most. Patrick Mahomes, the one quarterback I'm underweight to, not significantly, though. He's projected for 57% ownership. I'm at 55%, getting pretty well overweight to CJ Stroud as well, and then even on Tua as well. So it's going to be Tua and Mahomes. We're going head-to-head in that very cold weather game. Last I saw, the temperature is just expected to be frigid for that game in Kansas City, which could be a little bit of an advantage to the Chiefs. The Dolphins much more used to playing in warmer weather conditions, and then Tua himself played quarterback in college at Alabama. So I imagine there's only a handful of times that he has played in very, very cold temperatures. But looking at the quarterback exposures, we're making really big stand here. It's particularly with Joe Flacco and with the Browns, and that's just for the salary saving aspect that we're getting from Cleveland that we can't find with the other offenses on this slate. Running backs. Let's see what we're getting to as far as running backs are concerned for Saturday. Not really getting to any of the contrarian guys, like not finding ourselves with any backups getting into lineups, not even finding that I'm getting exposure to Devon Achane or Raheem Mostert, which I'm also okay with, because if you look at some of these other backs like Jerome Ford, to some extent he shares the backfield with Kareem Hunt, but we could feel pretty good about Jerome Ford's workload. We could feel good about Devin Singletary's workload and Isaiah Pacheco. There is clearly a lot of upside in backs like Achane and like Raheem Mostert, but the problem is that they're both so expensive. They're the two most expensive running backs that we have on the slate here for OwnersBox, if I'm not mistaken. Double check to make sure that that is the case here. And yeah, we have Mostert is 6,500, Achane is 63, Pacheco is 65. But once again, like, you feel better about Pacheco's workload. It's much more projectable that he's going to be the workhorse in the backfield as compared to guys like Mostert or Achane. Now, where this changes potentially is that Mostert is officially listed as questionable for Saturday. So if Mostert doesn't play, then Achane rockets up the board and it becomes a much more desirable option. But in a spot where it's going to be Achane and Mostert sharing the backfield at premium price points, it's hard to really get behind them in any kind of meaningful way, which is why I'm not getting to any of them in my top lineups here. Most of my running back exposure going to Pacheco, going to Singletary, going to Jerome Ford, which I have no issue with. The biggest stand here, Ford only project for 42, well, only, but, relative to a two-game slate, it kind of comes across as only 42 because that's less than Singletary. It's less than Pacheco, yet he's the running back that I'm finding myself getting to the most of here for Cleveland. Jerome Ford in about 3/4 of my lineups. Now let's check out the wide receivers. Then we'll go to the tight ends, and we'll build some lineups out for the Sunday slate, and we'll see what's popping up there. I mean, just look at all the Browns exposure here. Of my 4 most rostered wide receivers, 3 of them coming to us from the Cleveland Browns. Elijah Moore, David Bell, Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper about even with the field on, but well overweight to Elijah Moore and David Bell. David Bell more of a punt option. Elijah Moore also very cheap, just not quite as cheap as David Bell is, but it really shows us what we could do. If we build lineups that are very heavily stacked around the Browns, you could pay up to all the other guys you want. You want to play Nico Collins? Cool. You could do it if you have Browns in your lineup. You want to play Travis Kelce at tight end? Cool. You could do it if you have Browns in your lineup. That's where I really do like the salary savings here yet again. If we're looking at wide receivers that I'm getting to outside of the Cleveland Browns, Rashee Rice is showing up in a good amount of lineups, about even with the field, though, because he's projected for 32% ownership. Robert Woods, once again, he is listed as questionable to play. If he is out there, he's somebody who looks to be going overlooked by the field. Only 16% projected ownership. And we have to keep in mind, too, no Tank Dell for the Houston Texans. That has led to bigger workloads for Robert Woods. Now, Robert Woods clearly not the wide receiver he was a couple of years ago, but the Texans have made use of him at times when they've been shorthanded this year. And if you look, it's not like we have an outrageous projection on him. We only have him projected for 6 fantasy points. That's enough for me to get him in 27% of lineups, well overweight to the 16% exposure. Player that I'm a little bit underweight to the field here, Tyreek Hill, who's just massively expensive, and that's the case everywhere. When I've been building out sims for OwnersBox, for DraftKings, for FanDuel, for the Saturday slate, I can't quite get to Tyreek Hill. Not like entirely or anything like that. He's still in 24% of my lineups, but most sites, we've got him projected anywhere from like 30 to 45% ownership this weekend. And I'm finding it hard to get to that kind of level where there isn't a ton of punt options that we feel terrific about loading up on. Like, sure, I get to some of David Bell, but even 43% of David Bell wasn't enough to get me to more than 24% of Tyreek Hill. So what I'd really have to do is, I think I'd have to go even higher on my exposures on David Bell and Elijah Moore in order to increase my exposure to Tyreek Hill. I'm just not all that comfortable with it, especially when you consider how cold the weather is going to be in that Dolphins-Chiefs game. And on top of that, you just have the issue with Tyreek Hill being very, very expensive for this slate. Like, if I remember on DraftKings, I think Tyreek Hill is $8,700, and then there isn't a single other skill position player even priced above 7,000. So he's so much more expensive than everybody else. We've got somebody in the chat here. A woman is saying favorite tight end and defense on the Saturday slate. Yeah, so I'll pull up tight end here in a second. As far as defenses go, probably the Chiefs. Yeah, I'm going to say with the Chiefs defense. Like, the problem that with defense in general. There's a lot of variance involved, so it's hard to predict. There isn't that much difference defense to defense. And on one hand, the clear worst quarterback on the slate relative to the other options, at least in terms of current talent level, is Joe Flacco. But because of the pricing, the Browns are the best overall value stack. So on one hand, it'd be like, well, the Houston Texans seem like the obvious choice, but not really for DFS purposes when I have as much exposure to the Browns as I do. So with that in mind, I'm going to say the Kansas City Chiefs, because as is, the Sims are already giving me less of the Miami Dolphins offense and Tyreek Hill than the field is. So it kind of makes sense that I would want to plug in the Chiefs defense in those spots. And then also some of the concerns I mentioned before with the cold weather, the fact that the Dolphins are a team that play in Miami. Tua played his college football in Alabama, hasn't played very many cold weather games in his career. That in itself could at least introduce some sort of variance to the point where I feel a little bit better about the Chiefs defense, but I don't try to put too much thought into the defenses I play because there is so much randomness involved. You know, a punt could be returned for a touchdown, and then all of a sudden a defense is optimal, even if they end up giving up like 30 points. Nothing else really standing out too much at wide receiver. I know that we got another question here from a woman in the chat saying, don't call me woman. It's literally what your name is in YouTube. Tight end. Tight end here is Dalton Schultz, the one I'm getting the most exposure to. So to answer your question, my favorite tight end, it is Dalton Schultz. So tight ends that I'm getting the most of are Dalton Schultz, David Njoku, Travis Kelce, Durham Smythe, and actually getting to a pretty good amount of tight ends here overall. And also because of some of the flex spots that we have here on OwnersBox, this is a spot where I'm totally cool with getting to lineups that have multiple tight ends in them. Wouldn't want to put a tight end in the SuperFlex spot, obviously, but for sure, I'm good with tight ends in the utility spot. So Saturday is loaded with some of the best fantasy tight ends. I know that Travis Kelce's taken a little bit of a step back this year, especially in the last few weeks, but he's still one of the overall best fantasy tight ends. Like the way that we've seen a step back from Travis Kelce, it's relative to our expectations for Travis Kelce, not necessarily an indictment on him overall as a tight end, because still he had nearly 1,000 receiving yards for a tight end. And that's a bar that we don't see very many tight ends get to this year. So tight ends, Schultz, Njoku, and then as well as Kelce and Durham Smythe. That is the way that my tight end exposure is breaking down. Like some shots on Akins, Brevin Jordan, Harrison Bryant, Noah Gray, but nothing all that significant. If you guys are playing 1, 2, 3 lineups, I would only focus on Schultz, Njoku, Kelce, and Durham Smythe, but primarily Kelce, Njoku, and Schultz for this weekend. So there we have the Saturday slate. Let's go ahead and build lineups out now for Sunday. Build these out here and see what it is that we are getting to. See what we've got here. And building out the lineup. So Sunday slate, we've got the 3 games, including the Bills-Steelers game. What is the latest betting info on this one? The latest betting info on Steelers-Bills. Last I saw, I think it was a 33.5-point spread. Got the lineups built and simulating now. All right, so all the lines and spreads. Yeah, we've got the Bills are favored by 9.5 points. The over-under is 33.5. So just a game that's expected to be incredibly low scoring. That is the game with the lowest total on the entire weekend by 10 points. Let's see. So 33.5 is the total in Steelers, Bills. And the next lowest total is 44 in Dolphins Chiefs. So yeah, 10.5 points is the difference between the lowest total and the next lowest total. Adam EG thinks that's Eric's burner in the chat there. Wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me. He's trying to find ways for us to talk about him and infuse himself into the conversation by creating burner accounts. All right, almost done here. So the games that we're going to have on the Sunday slate, we got Dolphins, Chiefs. Chiefs favored by 4.5 points, total of 44. Bills, Steelers. Bills favored by 9.5 points, total of 33.5. And then the, I read off one of the Saturday games. Packers, Cowboys on Sunday, as well as Lions, Rams. So my expectation here is going to be, well, the lineups are done, so I'm not going to guess what's in them. We will see here in a second. Let's favorite the top. How many lineups? What is the most we could play on OwnersBox for the Sunday slate? Sunday slate is 117 is the max entry. So I'm going to put in 117. And if you guys want to sign up at OwnersBox, sign up using the link below. You will get up to a $500 bonus on your first deposit there. But let's see. What do we have in here? Top overall projected lineup, Dallas-Detroit stack. Also Dallas-Detroit. By the way, one thing I do really like about the SuperFlex is that you can make these like crazy heavily correlated lineups at times where you could play the QBs in the same game and just play, two QBs from the same game. You get like two pass catchers on each side. And you can create some pretty crazy high upside lineups in case the game's an overtime game or any kind of like real shootout or anything like that. But anyway, number one overall projected lineup by Simulated ROI. Pretty good big gap from the top one to all the other ones that we have here. It is a Dallas-Detroit stack. On the Dallas side, we've got Dak Prescott paired with Tony Pollard, Brandon Cooks, and Jake Ferguson. And then on the Lions side, we have Jared Goff paired with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, and Josh Reynolds. Something to note is that it looks like there's a chance Sam Laporta is going to end up playing. Last week when he got banged up, it looked like he was going to be out for the entire postseason, but he did practice today. So I think that if I had to guess right now, he's more likely to sit than to play. But I think we should be open-minded to at least the possibility Laporta ends up being on the field. Now, let's go ahead and look at some of the other exposures we have, and we'll go position by position. Same deal, and then we will finish up for position. Then we'll be done with the show here. And if you guys have any other questions, just go ahead and let me know in the chat. And yeah, anything related to the NFL slate, not necessarily some of the bickering and nonsense that we have in the YouTube chat right now, but anything related to the NFL slate, we can certainly address those questions and talk about it. Now let's see what we have for quarterbacks. Quarterback exposure, two guys that were really getting heavily overweight to the field to are Jared Goff and Matt Stafford, coming in underweight to Jordan Love in a pretty decent way. Only 14% of my top lineups have him when he's projected for 21% ownership. Also a little bit underweight to Josh Allen, which I know on the onset seems uncomfortable because Josh Allen is the best fantasy quarterback in this game, but it is kind of hard to figure out who we ideally want to stack him with because Stephon Diggs has had a little bit of a down year for fantasy purposes. And then also just kind of value concerns. Josh Allen's very expensive. The Bills' offense is very expensive, and there isn't an abundance of value for the Sunday slate, which does make it hard to spend up for Josh Allen. Then you also have to factor in the bad weather in the game and the fact the Bills are massive favorites. If the Bills are going to be leading by like 10 points over the Steelers in the second half of that game, I don't think it's all that likely that they're going to be throwing the ball a massive amount in the second half of that game. They could be more conservative, run the ball with James Cook. So with that in mind, I do expect we're going to have more exposure to James Cook than Josh Allen. We go ahead and look at the running backs. But Jared Goff and Matt Stafford, those are the QBs that I'm finding myself getting to the most for Sunday. And then at running back, yeah, there he is, James Cook, about even with the field, but still like I was expecting. We are getting to more of him than Josh Allen. And there's a little bit of negative correlation between Cook and Allen. A lot of Allen's QB upside comes from his rushing touchdowns. And then obviously whenever Josh Allen is a rushing touchdown, that's one that James Cook doesn't have. Running backs we are getting the most of here are Tony Pollard and Aaron Jones. A.J. Dillon is currently projected out in our data. He's officially listed as questionable to play. So, some guesses are being made here in terms of who's going to be in, who's going to be out when we're doing this on Friday. So check back on Saturday and Sunday for the different shows we have to really be updated on the most recent news in terms of who's in and who's out of lineups. Other running backs of interest here, a little bit underweight to field on Kyron Williams, a little bit underweight to field on Jahmyr Gibbs, hardly getting to Jaylen Warren and not getting to any of Najee Harris. I'm totally cool with that. The game script is awful on paper for the Pittsburgh Steelers, not just the low team total, but then also the fact that they're really big underdogs. It doesn't set up all that well for Najee Harris or for Jaylen Warren in the running game because they're going to be down by 10 points in a low-scoring game in the later stage. They're probably going to have to throw the ball. Mason Rudolph, that's not likely to go all that well. Long story short, I don't like the Steelers. Steelers are my least favorite team of any team to play on any of the slates this weekend. No kind of hot take there. I think most people probably agree with that. At wide receiver, I really do like Jameson Williams as a somewhat contrarian punt option. Now, he is projected for 31% ownership, so maybe contrarian isn't the right word, but he's not crazy popular or anything like that. And another thing, too, with Jameson Williams, he has massive big play upside. And that's something that could really play in our favor for this Sunday slate, where if there aren't a lot of players that have like the traditional points per dollar value, because it's the playoffs, right? There aren't too many players that are missing games at this time of the season. Well, Jamison Williams is a home run hitter type of player at a cheap price point. We've seen him take screen passes to the house for touchdowns this year. We've seen him catch long passes down the seam for touchdowns this year. And that's the kind of big play upside you get from Jamison Williams that you aren't going to really find from other cheap options on the slate. Travis Duarte is saying right here, how about stacking Gibbs, Monty, and Kyron Williams together? I'm opposed to playing Gibbs and Monty Williams. I'm playing David Montgomery. Monty Williams. Thinking about the Pistons' shitty basketball coach. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not all that keen to play the two of them in the same lineup together because of some of the negative correlation there. I'd only want to play one of either of the Lions running backs in any lineups. Sharkilla G saying, bro, no human is designed to play in below freezing weather. Fair, but I do think there are still some people who are better equipped for it than others, such as like the Buffalo Bills, right? They're in Buffalo. They've played numerous games over the last few years and over the course of Josh Allen's career in the cold temperature. So I think that he's a little more suited for it than other running backs or other quarterbacks, I should say, that haven't been in those situations quite as much. And then Adam EG saying, negative 62 degrees Fahrenheit where I live tonight. KC isn't cold. By your standards, sure, maybe negative 30 degrees isn't cold. Yeah, negative 30 degrees, that's cold as hell where I am. And also, Adam, where do you live that it's negative 62 degrees? Like the South Pole? Like where are you that is negative 62 degrees? I'm legitimately curious. I've never Canada? Is that what the temperatures are like in Canada? I don't even know. That's cold. Other wide receivers that we're getting to here. Lots of Amon-Ra St. Brown in addition to Jamison Williams. So we got double stacks here with Jared Goff and then as well as Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Northern Alberta. Well, it sounds like it's cold. Note taken. I will never go to Northern Alberta. No offense to you, Adam. No offense, but that is way too cold for me. I am sitting inside in a sweatshirt right now. It is heated. I have central AC and heat and all that, and I am cold inside still. I am not going to deal with any kind of negative 62 degrees. Other wide receivers here, getting to a good amount of CeeDee Lamb as a spend up, and then Demarcus Robinson, another cheap option that's really popping up here. So Jamison Williams, Demarcus Robinson, those are your punt plays for the weekend at wide receiver, and really as far as skill position players go, because I'm not getting to very much punt guys at running back, which makes sense. There aren't any great cheap running backs to get to. So wide receiver saving salary on the Sunday slate with Jamison Williams and Demarcus Robinson. A little bit of Khalil Shakur as well, who's going to be benefiting from the absence of Gabe Davis. But I do definitely like Robinson and Williams a little bit more than Shakur. Let's go and check out the tight ends, and then we will be done here. So tight ends for Sunday. Brock Wright. This is very dependent, obviously, on Sam Laporta being out. If Laporta ends up playing, then obviously there's no need to play Brock Wright. Well, there's not a need to play Brock Wright anyway, but I have no interest in playing Brock Wright if Laporta is in. And one of the other reasons that Brock Wright looks somewhat decent for Sunday, look at the tight ends we have to roster. They suck. This is not a very good tight end slate on Sunday. Saturday's great for tight end. Sunday, garbage. So we've got Jake Ferguson, Brock Wright, Tucker Kraft, Tyler Higbee, Dalton Kincaid. These are not the best options. So Brock Wright is just the cheapest guy that's expected to get playing time right now, and that's enough for him to work into a lot of my top projected lineups. If Sam Laporta plays, totally changes the conversation of the tight ends, because then I'm going to be getting to more of Laporta, and then in turn, that will lower some of my exposure to guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb on the high end. Love Game saying negative 62 degrees. Greg would die. Yes, I would. I would absolutely die at negative 62 degrees. I would freeze to death. Also, I'm very skinny. I don't have very much meat on my bone. I'm not insulated enough to be able to handle these kind of temperatures. Not messing with it. Not messing with it. Anyway, that is going to do it for us today. A little bit of an overview for the Saturday and Sunday slates. For you guys who watched, thank you very much. I appreciate all the support. If you could be so kind, if you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, some scheduling for the rest of the day. We've got the NBA deep dive coming up shortly. After that, I'm going to be on NBA Live Before Lock tonight. And then tomorrow, we're going to have an NFL Live Before Lock, as well as on Sunday, another NFL Live Before Lock. So covering all of the different sports and all of the different slates this weekend. So check it all out, guys, and hope to see you there. Good luck. Have a great weekend.